Hi there, my name's Emily and I'm a technology and startup lawyer, but don't hold that against me. I've hung up my lawyer hat and taken what I've learnt into co-founding Tallystone, where we're creating automatic data rooms. But this video isn't about Tallystone or about me. It's about the countless founders, investors and advisors that we've interviewed as part of our market research who shared with us some fascinating stories and their hard-won lessons when it came to things like capital raising, acquisitions, investor relations, and just general company compliance. Now, after hearing these stories, we realized they were too valuable to keep to ourselves. So we've gone back and asked some of the people we interviewed to record a video with us and share their stories directly with you. Our first guest is Peta Ellis, General Manager of Beaten Zone Ventures and founder of HypeMogul PR. Peta was actually the catalyst and the one who pushed us to record these videos. And when she told us her experience of being a CEO during an acquisition, we knew this was the first story we wanted to tell. So, without further ado, here's Peta Ellis.
Okay. Hi, Peta. Thank you so much for joining me today to do this.
Hey, Emily, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get stuck into all of it. Now, I was going to do an introduction, but I was looking at your bio and your history, and I just knew I couldn't do any justice. So, if you wouldn't mind, please, who is Peta Ellis?
Who is Peta Ellis? That's a really big question. Look, at the moment, I'm general manager at Beaten Zone Ventures, which is a VC firm that invests into defence companies. So I've always been involved in innovation, always worked with startups, been involved in the Brisbane or Queensland startup and innovation ecosystem since 2012. So I also work with female founders as a mentor and a coach. So that's something that's remained pretty consistent for me. I've always had a passion for getting more women into starting their own businesses and helping them grow and scale. So that runs parallel to the work that I do with Beaten Zone as well. But previous to that, I've been involved in different areas of the ecosystem. I've worked at QUT previously to Beaten Zone for 4 years in the entrepreneurship team. And then before that, I was at Riverside Labs for 7 years. So always been involved in more the facilitation side of working with founders who are looking to start or to scale their businesses. And that can be in the format of, like Riverside Labs was running a co-working space, and we've run a lot of programs, and we also did run the Riverside Labs Accelerator, where we put through 4 different cohorts over 4 years. So there's 36 different companies and founders went through that program. And then QUT Entrepreneurship was lots of different students and that's all ages as well, looking to increase their capability and their entrepreneurial mindset, which went and it sort of was alongside their degree, whatever it was, because it was a co-curricular extracurricular program where they could engage in, look into and become educated in all things entrepreneurship, so they can look at how they might be able to apply it in the future, whether it's their job or their career, or basically just for their own personal skill set to be able to upgrade their mindset around how to think more entrepreneurially in whatever pathway that they were going to be going down in their career and their studies. So that's pretty much me.
Wow, you've been busy.
Yes, yeah. And look, I've always had businesses of my own and always been doing things on the side. I think doing one thing at a time has always been a challenge of mine, and I think that allows me to work really well with entrepreneurs because I completely understand their mindset and where they're at, where they want to head to. I've got lived experience, plus I've also facilitated other people's growth in that area as well. So yeah, it's a big interest and passion point of mine for sure.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to add was that you really do live the values that you present online as well. I mean, you talk about wanting to support female founders, and the way we met was you speaking on a UQ female innovation panel.
Yeah, I do love speaking. I love being able to give back. Plus, it's for me, it's an opportunity to always meet new people who are doing things, and it's quite easy to forget that everybody's got a lot to share. And I use speaking as a method to be able to tell stories. Either they're my own or they're from some of the founders that I've worked with over the years. And there is so much learning in sharing the journey. And I really do focus on making sure that I do continue to give back in that format. Speaking is a massive part of what I do work with a lot of founders and encourage them to share their story along the way and to bring that level of, I think, transparency to the journey of starting and growing companies, because it's not always easy, and the best lessons are always learned from those who have walked the path before, and they have their own personal tips, things to avoid, things to do, shortcuts, personal advice, lived experience. I think they're really valuable. You can go and study things, but you would probably have experienced it yourself, is when you hear it from somebody firsthand that has done it, there's a level of respect and trust there. And I think when most people who have walked the path before you would much rather share what they've done to help you and your journey be that little bit easier, or provide you some more information so that you don't have to make the same mistakes.
And that's how we found ourselves here, was you encouraging me to share the stories that we've been collecting as part of our customer interviews and talking with people. We've heard some really significant stories when it comes to company actions and governance and just managing a company in general. And so thank you. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. So we'll jump right in to the subject matter then, which is, once again, the themes from speaking with founders, investors, and advisors, is the stories about managing companies and the lessons to be learned from that. The story that stuck out for me when we spoke about this was what you said about being CEO of River City Labs during an acquisition, and the processes involved in that. And so I'd love to start with, could you set the scene? Where were you at? Where was RCL at? And before the acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it was in 2019. We started we'd already been going for 7 years, and it was like any sort of startup, is you most of the time with new ideas and new businesses and early stage companies, is you just start without a great deal of thought and preparation and structure, apart from the basics of making sure that you are registered, you've got your account set up and you are operating, you have a logo, you've got your brand sorted, you're officially registered. And then often, when you start, you can get lost in the doing of things, especially when there's only a really small team. And you obviously make sure that you have everything that you need so that you can officially and legally operate in business. But as you grow with more team members, more customers, the requirements to be able to have the back-end systems and processes to support that growth, whether you start with them or you acquire them along the way, sometimes there's a lot of trial and error working out what systems you need, if any, and how they can best suit you. And I think you don't really know that unless two ways. If you've studied it and learned what you actually do need to know, or you've done it before and realize how hard it is to scale when you don't have the right systems. And then also when you need to hand over information, data on the business, whether it is customer data, whether it is financial documentation and data, when you're working with your accountants and lawyers, the ability to be able to hand it over easily to make sure that we have everything documented. It all comes down to what systems and processes that you use. And I think in the beginning for us, we used most of the standard startup stack, which most of our own community members were also using. We were in the business of growing a community and building an ecosystem, as well as managing our own space, which was a little bit more of a real estate related play with selling memberships and desk space and event space. So there was probably multiple ways that we could have done what we did differently with the type of business that we were. However, we just had one main database to manage our customers' data. And it didn't have the level of functionality that highlighted the various touch points that our customers had, how much repetition was involved in terms of, so if we had members who were a member of ours, but they might not have been a real estate member, someone who actually, so there's a difference between being a member, a financial member, a community member, and then a resident member. And had we have had the right systems that were a bit more robust to track that level of data, we could have probably looked at the business in a really different way, opposed to how we did, which was all of our people lumped in together into one main database. So when someone said, how many members do you have? Well, that could mean financial, could mean free, it could mean customers. So didn't really give a true snapshot and it didn't give a level of intelligence to the data that could have definitely been there. We did eventually get there, but it took a lot of manual sorting of multiple lists. And I think also when you have different operators coming in, so you might have the marketing person who's managing one list, then you might have the ops or general manager or whoever's in those roles managing the business side of things, running a different list. And then if you introduce Xero halfway along or whatever other accounting software that you have, your customers then get onboarded onto that platform, but it might not be the entirety of the customer database. And all of a sudden you've got lists now split across different platforms, which is exactly how we were operating. And at the time that it came to the owner wanting to sell and see who was interested in the market, then obviously we went through a level of we went through a period of time where we had external consultants come in, have a look at what we had to sell. And that was looking at when you're a community-based organization, it really is based off the impact into the ecosystem that we were having. So we had a very large front door of relevance in the market, meaning we were very well known. We were well respected for delivering value to the community, whether we were generating income off the back of the value we were delivering. That was a really hard thing to be able to explain and document and quantify what the value of that was. So we did a lot of to look through all of the historical information we had, and it took probably 3 times as long that it needed to. Whereas if I had been operating a really good system from the start, tracking the data, measuring the impact, looking at the lifetime of our customers. I couldn't have even told you how much it would cost us to get a customer and what the lifetime value of our customer was. I could tell you because I've been there long enough. Now, if you took me out of that scenario, all of that IP went. And that was quite a tricky position to be in, because then the success or the metrics were trapped in an individual employee's experience and mind, right? So that's not a good position for any business to be in. Whereas if I had have continuously downloaded and updated and put what was up in here, those relationship values into data that could be then quantified later on, that would have been a really different position. Look, we ended up having a great outcome with the acquisition, meaning we did get acquired, which was great. But then there was a really tricky transition period of taking what we had and embedding into a very corporate organization. There was lessons to be learned from both sides. So a large corporate organization looking to purchase or acquire or invest in, let's say, it could have gone either way. Say if we were taking on investment, we would have had to go through the same process, because any organization that's looking to acquire another organization, even on face value or reputational value, what they're buying or purchasing or investing in is valuable to them on street cred and reputation. But data-wise, what are they actually buying? And they were buying market relevance. They were buying a really good marketing arm. They were buying a community. But again, it didn't stack up in the data and the systems and the process. And the other thing was content. So we were really well known for putting on a lot of events. So we brought a lot of people together and we exchanged a lot of value. Like I said before in the storytelling piece, anytime we host an event, a guest speaker would come in, so much value exchanged happened in the room with someone verbally telling the stories or sharing knowledge or teaching people how to do things. So to an audience that was sitting in the room, physically sitting in the room. None of it was recorded. None of it was documented, which means we had hundreds of really valuable guests with thousands and thousands of hours of content learning that could have possibly been captured and then repurposed many, many years later, and possibly even generated revenue streams from the back of the content that we might have been able to package up into webinars that people had access to, online memberships, or even course material, right? We didn't capture any of that. First of all, we didn't know how. The systems also back then weren't like what it is now, right? So the ability to even host things online, we're talking pre-Zoom era. We weren't even utilizing our social media channels. We had Twitter, which we used a lot. We didn't use LinkedIn. We had Facebook groups. Instagram was only brand new. We were doing a lot of lives. I think Twitter was even doing lives back then. So again, this is one of the lessons is often businesses go with what platforms are available to them at the time because that's where the audience is. However, if you have consistently process of capturing the information and the data yourself on a platform that you own, where you can own the content and store the content and then document it and repurpose it, package it up in all other ways, then you can sort of then publish on multiple platforms as they come and go with relevance wherever your customers are. So some really, really big lessons there in terms of lost quality, information, data, content, which would have been valuable to the company. Plus also we had a lot of value that we couldn't actually quantify. We couldn't explain it because we hadn't captured it in a format that can be seen that was more than just word of mouth. So many lessons learned, and it's really exposing when you are the organization being acquired. As nice as it is that you are going through the whole process and somebody actually wants what you've got. When you open it's like opening that cupboard in your house with all the stuff that you shove in it, right? And all the stuff's falling out and you're like, oh God, I should have dealt with this before today. It works, you can make it work, and then you have externals coming and going, this is what is this? What is in this cupboard? And you're like, well, kind of it's a little bit of this and it's actually a bit of that. No, that relates to that. No, that's something from that. It means a lot, but unless I'm here explaining to you, it means nothing. Mm-hmm. So huge lessons, and it's definitely been something that I've taken into every project I've worked with ever since, is making sure that things are documented, captured, stored, systems and processes. There's formalities to things. Even, the first interaction of a customer is documented, where they came in, questions are asked, databases are saved and backed up in multiple locations, because it's less often about that, like we tend to focus so much on, say, our accounting software, and we're talking about revenue and product and sales, yet you can be at the same time building so much value in content and knowledge and reputation, but you need to put as much effort into that, even though it's not generating revenue. It's not to say it won't eventually, or you couldn't possibly do it. So often our focus goes where the money is or where the revenue is, and not where the other things are. And sometimes they can end up being more valuable, or they can dovetail in together. They can form the ultimate package in the end. But the ability to know what's important, what you should be doing in the beginning, because it seems like a waste of time when you've got more pressing things. And if you're the only person when you start up, you've got, even if there's 2 of you or 3 of you, you're so stretched for time. And knowing where to best spend your time, because these are problems that you have in 3, 4, 5 years time. It's not today's problem, it's a 5-year away problem. And it's really difficult to spend time on 5-year away problems when you've got ones right in front of you. And it's that trade-off. It's like, where do I spend my time? What's going to be important? Somebody told me it's going to be important, but is it really? And you'll often question that. So that's where the value in, speaking to mentors, speaking to others who have walked that path before you. And I can guarantee you this same issue is very common. We were very content heavy. Not all businesses are, but definitely the information around customers, tracking their movements, asking questions. And there's no reason to not have these systems now. There's so many of them. Sometimes we can have too many. That's probably the other thing to look out for, is not signing up to everything, because then you've now got data spread across, 5 different platforms when it could have been 3. It's shiny object syndrome as well. I still am a victim to this, and I know I'm doing it when I'm signing up to just another platform again, because it does something which looks amazing. But again, I then have more data sitting over here, but I've got some here and I've got some here and here. And I probably haven't looked at it or created a bit of a routine around doing a bit of an audit with platforms, even if it's monthly or quarterly, to look at what you've got. Where is the difference in data sitting? Because just because it does something that you need doesn't really mean that you need it right now. And asking yourself those hard questions would be good. And I still believe there's so much value in having external people have a look at your systems to say, hey, I know you've probably introduced this because it looks good or it says it would do this, but I don't even know if your business is at that stage to need it right now. Or did you know that this other platform over here does this feature? So you can probably get rid of that other subscription and now bring everything over here. External eyes opinions, opening up what you're doing to others, having advisors, mentors are so invaluable. But it feels really, it feels a bit scary sometimes when you're starting, is opening the insides of what you're doing to other people, because you don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. And it's just that, that line that you walk in the beginning where you're working everything out. You want to be doing it right. You don't really want to be getting it wrong, but then you also kind of do need the help. So it's all of those things tied in together.
So many things to unpack here. I really want to focus on, what could you do if you're starting now, and then what could you do when you're halfway through? So similar to what you were going through, which is you've already been running, RCL had been running for a while at this point, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now we need to get ready. You talked about bringing on external consultants. What were some of the advice that you got? What were tangible things that you changed in order to prepare?
Well, all we did was we had to do a lot of consolidation. So when externals come in, they really want just files. They want files and data. They don't want lots of access to lots of different files where they then have to go and sort through all this information. So how simple can you pull all of your information together in a really concise way that tells a story? Historical data is really important, even if it's old and you probably don't think it's relevant. Externals, if you're having an analyst come in and have a look at your information, even if it doesn't mean anything to your business right now because it was, 5 years ago type of customer relationship, an external can probably come in and have a look at and see patterns in behavior that you may not be able to see yourself, and you pass it off as being data that's old and irrelevant. But an external coming in with a fresh set of eyes, which is usually what happens at this time, is not so much to revive old customer relationships, but to look at maybe patterns in where things changed in the business or improved or got worse or whatever the scenario is. That sort of information is really important. So it's about basically just having access, putting everything in one place, even if it doesn't matter what platform it is, but if it's able to be given, provided access or give other people access to it. It's a bit similar to having, obviously, when you bring on investors and you set up a deal room or a data room where there's access that you can provide. So we actually had a data room set up where only, X amount of people were allowed access into the data room, so we could see who was in there, what documents they were looking at, for how long. It's quite standard process. And I was always surprised what documents they were looking at, because again, they're looking for a story. So often, if you've got an external coming in, the external purchaser or investor are going to have someone from their side looking at the information, and then whoever's helping you set your side up need to have access to information, and everybody is in there looking for different things and where they can sort of manipulate data and information, and at the end of the day tell a story, or looking for any discrepancies. So if you've basically said, this is what we're tracking, this is what we're doing, where is the data to back that up? And you can't assume professionals will be looking at like reputation, impact. They're all things that are really nice words to use and to have. However, is there information and data that backs up everything that you're saying? And that's probably the most important thing. And if you're finding it's an area that is a difficult thing to measure and track, like, let's say, community impact, which we had a big problem trying to work out, how do you actually measure impact? How do you actually find the right metrics to highlight what the value and the reach that we're having is? Because there's nothing to measure that. So finding ways to still tell that story, utilizing data that is accessible. So we ended up using the amount of people that would see walk through the door, and tracking attendance at events, the numbers over the years, the different reach that we might be getting in on social media or traditional media, and eyeballs and feet in the door. So there's lots of different ways to track that, but then you've got to be able to tell the story to it as well.
Yeah, it's the recurring theme here is absolutely stories, I think.
It is, but stories aren't enough. Stories are great, and it's marketing, and that was quite a difficult position for me because I am the storyteller. My background being, marketing, public relations, is all around storytelling, and that's wonderful. It sounds lovely. But when you have an analyst looking at your information, you've got to be able to have the stats and the numbers to back it up as well.
So now, if we look at someone who's really early in their journey then, and preparing, whether they haven't even launched their business or they've just started, what would you say start doing now?
Always Create a database. So always get your database sorted. Have some sort of CRM. Track the movement and interest of your potential customers or leads. Where are they coming from? How do they find out about you? What touch points do you have? Really look at those things. This is something that I've had so many different types of businesses over the years, and I was always very terrible at data. And now it's probably the one thing that I look at first, because you can't pay the bills off feel good followings. It doesn't work. You've got to be able to convert community into customers and have a plan to do that. You can hope for the best, and most of the time, if you're doing everything right, it will convert. But the strategy behind it has to be quite strategic in looking at, and because you can close the gap between when people actually do make a decision by understanding human behavior, putting metrics to it, and actually focusing on bringing that gap from when people are interested to when they actually purchase and how they engage. And if you understand the movements of customers and all of that in the beginning, when you're starting out and you're still trying to work out who your customers are, can be really confusing. So you don't really know what you're tracking. So I think the key there is to get up a basic CRM set in, put as much information in as possible in terms of this person, ask the questions. Where do people find you? What are they looking for? Put it into CRM. It might make no sense in the beginning, and it feels like you're over engineering a really simple process. But down the track, you'll be quite glad that you did enter the information in, or you started tracking from the early stages, so that because it takes a couple of years sometimes before you start to see patterns.
Now, what else in terms of having good data capture as well? What other pieces of information? So obviously it sounds like the customer side of things and these kind of intangibles as well, capturing those is really important. You touched before on kind of briefly with financials, having Xero or any other type of accounting software set up. Is there any other types of information that people should be looking to capture from day one?
Yeah, look, there is. Financials are huge, and if it's not your strong suit, find someone that is stronger in it than you, and that can be. It doesn't always need to mean bringing on a staff member. Just go and find a really good accountant to support you and say, look, and be totally okay with that's not your strength. Saying, I'm starting this. What do I need to set up? What do you want from me regularly? Check in regularly. Yes, you can go and do your annual tax, but I would always recommend catch up with them on a regular basis so that you can ask the questions. It's worth paying the fee to go and see the professional so that you are held accountable just to getting it done. Because I can guarantee you in your spare time, you're not going to go and think about reconciling accounts or doing your best. It's just never going to be the thing you do first. Never, ever in your spare time. It never happens. And then there's a backlog. And then often when you have to go and do those kinds of activities which feel like a grind, you need information. Whereas if you've got a regular cadence of checking in with your financial representative, whoever that might be, someone in-house or an external, means you know that every couple of weeks you're checking in, you've got to bring your questions with you or bring their receipts, learn how to do things. They're quite self-explanatory now in terms of online software, whether it's Xero, QuickBooks, all of those things, right? So there's so many easy ones for every stage of business, and even they're inbuilt. You look at any e-commerce platforms, there's so many good tools that are built in that teach you how to do it. Any website now has its own system that helps you and sets reminders, right? So there's no real reason to let those things fall away. Accountability is key. Find some people around you that will keep you accountable, ask you those questions. You've got to do the boring grind stuff.
On that note, the last question I was going to ask you was, preparing for this, I asked you, what's a controversial opinion you hold about this area? Would love to hear it again from your own words, and also like the why behind it, and without giving away what you're going to say.
I have to remember what I said now. I forgot what I said. No, I'm going to find the document.
That's all right. I'll say what the headline was, and then I'd love you to go into it, which was that if you want to register a business, you need to, as part of your business registration, list 3 mentors that you have that are going to be there to be your support for you starting your business journey.
Okay, yes, I'm back on track. I was just trying to think, what did I say? I know it was good when I said it, then I was like, what was it?
I couldn't let you off the hook without talking about it.
Yeah, so look, it's a really interesting thing. starting businesses are easy. It's easy. It's fun. It's exciting. They've made, everyone has made it much easier to start businesses, and it's not for everybody. That's the thing. Running businesses requires a lot of skill and a lot of commitment. And I'm not going to say it's hard, because I get bored of people saying it's really hard, because it is difficult. Most things are, right? But then there's levels of ease and insight and excitement to it. So I don't ever want to put people off, because I believe that, like, by all means, go and have a go. Do believe that with the ease that they've made it easy. Like, go online. You can literally register your business, register for GST, set yourself up, get an ABN, and away you go, right? That's how easy it is. But with that comes so much responsibility of running an actual company, running an actual business. So, of course, if you set up as a sole trader, if you set up as whatever the format is, obviously if it's set up as a company or a trust or whatever, you're going to need the input of an accountant and a bit more, legal and financial support to set that up. So I'm hoping that people have spoken to professionals in that sense and then got a bit of feedback. But in general, I would love, the government to make it mandatory that with your application to get an ABN, you've actually listed 3 potential mentors that you can reach out to. And there should be a database of mentors which you can select, because I feel it's probably we would avoid a lot of challenges and troubles if you actually had people who have walked the path before that you can reach out to on a regular basis. And you have to earn some sort of credit to go, yes, I've had my mentor call this quarter, or me as a mentor is, yes, I've done my time. So to keep some sort of level of registration going, you have to do some mentoring and you have to get some mentoring. I just think most of the problems that most of the issues that happen are just because there's been no one checking in, and they can all be avoidable if somebody who knew what they were doing saw them. And often you don't know what's gone wrong because you haven't seen that problem before, or you don't realize when something is small, if you leave it for long enough, it can become quite big of a problem. I know I've been there. I've had businesses when I was much younger and I did not know what I was doing. I just really wanted to start and get going. And had I have had the accountability of having to have an experienced mentor check in on me explain where I'm up to with them, they probably would have shed some light on some giant gaping holes in some of my earlier businesses that I was just too young and ignorant to notice, and could have avoided maybe some things ending earlier, might have enabled me to have a better business at the end of it. So I think, if I know it's not mandatory now, I would say when you're starting, go and find 3 people who have done it first and ask them to be a mentor, and say specifically, this is a weak spot of mine. I really want accountability on this. Please call me out on it. I'm going to have some gaps here. And it comes with the requirement to have a radical sense of self-awareness and the responsibility. You have to be able to take responsibility for your own actions and not just run along blindly and hope that it's all going to work out for the best. And be self-aware enough to say that I know it's good, and be okay with getting feedback that's not great, because that's the only way you can get better anyway.
It ties into what you're saying about, being vulnerable. It's okay that you don't know everything.
Yes.
You're not expected to. And
Yes.
reach
You're
out,
not
and there's
expected
people who
to.
do know.
I wish someone had told me that when I was younger, is you don't need to know everything. And if you did get help, it doesn't mean that you're not a good operator. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means we end up being better. I just really wish someone had told me that, like properly told me that in a way that I was going to listen.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to listen.
I think you've done that now for the people who are going to be watching this.
But you could have told me that at 25 and I would have gone, yeah, I'm good. Like, I'm still good. I was just, sometimes it's you get in your own way. And I was in my own way for about 20 years, I reckon. So whenever you learn it, you learn it.
Yeah. Some lessons you just have to learn.
You just have to learn it the hard way. Yep. But that would be my advice. If anyone's listening and they're starting, go and find people. There are so many people who are happy to get involved. And, I'm not saying everyone needs to do this for free, but if you paid someone like an hour, and okay, it costs you $250, let me tell you, $250 to a professional to tell you the honest truth is better than having to owe stupid amounts of tax bills or get out of a ridiculously large lease that you signed up for because you thought it was a great idea. Like that, we're talking thousands of dollars of errors that can be avoidable if you had the right people in your corner to ask a question.
Well, is there a way that people could reach out to you to
Yeah,
ask this
absolutely.
kind of advice?
LinkedIn
How can they
always.
reach out?
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk to people. Always happy to talk to people. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn is the best way. So Peta Ellis, not easy to find me there. Reach out and say you saw this and taking up your advice, and I'm not going to be stupid.
What an intro to a LinkedIn message.
I'm not going to be stupid. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter. I've learned lots as well from this process. So I really appreciate you giving up your time.
No, thank you. I hope you get lots more awesome guests on here to share their insight too, because it's such an area that we don't really talk about. And every single person who's been in business or involved in a business somewhere along the line, I can guarantee you, has got some feedback around this area. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, thank you so much.
Awesome. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.